So, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining today's session. My name is Nicole Mulako, and I'm the Program Officer in charge of Library and Consortia from the Training Center in Communication. And we are excited to have all of you today for this joint workshop that was co-organized by TCC Africa, Figshare, and KLISC, the Library Consortia. Amazing speakers aligned for us for today's session. So feel free to interact via chat. And just to learn a bit of house rules just before I give you the orientation of the session is number one is we are recording this session. So you're all going to get a recording of this session afterwards. And then should you have a question in between, feel free to put it in the chat, or if it's very urgent, just raise your hand and we'll be able to see you so that we can address your question. Aside from that, we do have an interactive discussion afterwards towards the end of the session, so you can wait also for that bit. So today's session is it's very key. It has come at a time where this is a conversation that we keep having all the time. I shared with you via email the program of the day. So you're all aware of what you expect, what is expected, who are you going to listen to today. Some of you have met some of the speakers, maybe physically in some of the KLISC activities. I know this is a more of a kind of a one-on-one interaction you're going to have during this workshop. So without taking much further time, I'd like to welcome Professor Arnold Mwanzu, who's the chairman of KLISC, and welcome, sir, and give your opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nicole, and good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this webinar. I can see we have colleagues from Figshare and TCC and a number of colleagues from KLISC. So I will just be very brief and give sort of like a background of our correspondences with the TCC and Figshare, and then I'll read out a few objectives from my speech. So just to mention, we started partnering with Figshare and TCC as they were attending our conferences and webinars as exhibitors. I think all the way to back in 2024, that's when I think we had our first webinar where issues of data repository adoption came about. And of course, later on, they also came and presented. Last year, we had a joint, presentation by Figshare and TCC. And of course, I have been working closely with the team, of course, their director, Joy Owango, and they also have been coming, giving us updates in the KLISC governing board in terms of what they're doing. So today is just a follow-up of what they already presented, issues of strengthening research data management. We know in Kenya, institutions have already adopted repositories, institutional repositories, but the repositories we have are mainly for textual content like PDFs. That's where we upload our thesis, our faculty publications, and the likes. But now in the other frontier, we have data repositories. And as KLISC, in our strategic plan, we are very particular about moving Kenya to the next level, where we identify gaps and see how to fill those gaps in terms of research data management. In Kenya, not many organizations have data repositories. There could be about maybe 2 or 3, mostly the NGOs. So there is a gap, and we'll be looking at that. The other thing that you'll be hearing from the presentations, and I think maybe now I can just go to my speech. The outcomes of this webinar is for participants to understand the importance of persistence identifiers. So PIDs are an example of a PID is, ORCID. ORCID is a PID for authors. We also have other PIDs like handles. For those of you who have DSpace, you have maybe registered a handle.net PID. We also have Crossref and so on and so forth, the DOIs. So this is just another model, and TCC have been working on something they are calling a digital object container identifier through their flagship called the Africa PID Alliance Initiative. And through this, they hope to try and provide an African-led PID, which preserves indigenous knowledge And I don't know how to speak so much about it, but I've had a chance to experience and even get to test it. So I believe that's what they will be doing today. One of the things we agreed as part of our partnership with the TCC and Africa PID is that at the end of the year, not really at the end of the year, I think this is the right time for us to start this. They are going to give free access to a number of organizations, KLISC organizations, to pilot the DOCID, the DOCID. So that is a very good step that we have, taken together with the TCC, so that even in future, as they roll out to other countries, they have already tested it in Kenya, and our institutions have benefited for free. The other outcomes is that we expect participants to gain practical insights on the workflow of DOCID. So I believe they'll be doing some demo and taking you through the live platform. I understand it is already functional in some organizations like Stellenbosch University in South Africa and a few other universities also down in South Africa. And so you'll also expect to understand the requirements and the process for onboarding. Our secretary, Dr. Agava, already shared with you an expression of interest, and I believe you have received it. In case you haven't received it, it will again be projected today. And the whole idea is for you to fill the EOI so that we can now start onboarding, knowing how many institutions are interested in the Figshare and also the DOCID. So these are two different initiatives that we are handling together with Figshare and the Africa PID Alliance. So I don't want to take so much time, just to appreciate the team. This has been a long time coming. And of course, it is always good to see Kenyan products being developed, because we know we are mostly consumers. I always say whenever we have functions that it's always good for Kenyans and Africans at large to also try and be producers, whether it is innovation, knowledge, or any form of information. And I think what TCC and Africa PID are doing is an example of how Kenyans and also Africans can just take up, fill the gap, and see how to come up with solutions. On the part of Figshare, our licensing and negotiation committee, led by Dr. Penina, has already engaged Figshare on negotiations for an amount that, in case an institution joins, wants to have Figshare to set up for them a data repository, we get a subsidized rate. And I think the call that we are giving as KLISC is we would like as many universities and research organizations and libraries to show interest, because the more we have many institutions, the better we are in terms of negotiating for a subsidized rate. So kindly pay attention to the presentations, both from Figshare and from TCC, and let's see how we can strengthen research data management in Kenya. Just for context, for those of you who are wondering what is a data repository and how different is it from the other digital repository that we have. So the digital repository that you have will technically store data like your thesis, your papers from your faculty and your master students and your PhD students, and even some people put their newsletters and other kind of institutional scholarly output. But for our data repositories, now this stores raw data. So let's say you have been carrying out a very big research in a lab, and you had files in raw files, maybe in R or SPSS or Stata. So those raw files that are really huge, then that is where they are stored. They have the stems, sort of a similar kind of schema, just like Dublin Co. But now here you're uploading data. And of course, issues of Creative Commons and how it can be reshared and reused are very clear. I think there are also plans in place to I attended a workshop for Plus One, and I know nowadays you can even cite data that you have used from a data repository, and it gets citations, and you're actually acknowledging that this data was not mine. I used it from somebody who went to the field. Maybe you went to Muranga, you collected demographics, and you have all that data together. It is, the copyright is under you. of course, Creative Commons, but now you're uploading it in a data repository for other people who do not have, funding to be able to utilize the same. So it is very much in the line of open access and open science. So whenever you see issues of data management, look at it from the same perspective from a repository, but it's just now that you're expanding in the kind of data that you are curating. I don't want to say much. The experts are here. They will be telling you more about data repositories. In Kenya, I know of two organizations that have data repositories. I think ISIPE and ILRI. I'm not so sure if there's a university that has a data repository, but most of the products that are there are there's Dataverse, there's Figshare, there's Nodo. So those are some of the terminologies that you're supposed to familiarize with when you're talking about data repositories. Dr. Agava will also be making a presentation. I know this is his area of research, and he'll be sharing more light. So as KLISC, I want to just wish you all the best in this webinar and encourage us that after the presentation, let us express interest. Those institutions that have a budget to set up a data repository, we have Figshare. They are the ones who have come to us. Of course, we know there are many platforms out there, but for now, Figshare have come to us and they are willing to work with KLISC at a subsidized rate to set up data repositories. Of course, there was also a proposal of us setting up a national data repository, but we know it is possible. But for now, we want to start with the institutional ones, and then later on, we can see if there is a possibility of setting up a KLISC infrastructure for data repositories for universities and research organizations in Kenya. So thank you so much. I wish you all the best in this webinar, and please be active and ask questions. Let us see how we can all strengthen research data management in Kenya. Thank you, and back to you, Nicole.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arnold, for that wonderful speech. I'll now hand over to the session moderator of the day, Ms. Joy Owango. Ms. Joy?
Thank you so much, Nicole, and Dr. Mwanzu. This session will, the webinars today, actually we are more calling it like a community call, will start today and tomorrow. And today we are coming in with our partners, Figshare, and we want to focus on how we can improve our data management. And as Dr. Mwanzo has said, these are conversations we've had for quite some time with KLISC. I remember you also had a meeting with the DOAJ last year in December, to be precise. And one of the things that DOAJ was proposing with Ms. Ina Smith, those of you who managed to make it for that workshop at Lillian Towers, was that having a data repository is really essential to your publication life cycle as well. And at that point, even Ms. Smith had talked about how Figshare supports the ASAF where she works and DOAJ, and how it would be really beneficial to you as an academic community. Now, the reason why we're also saying this and reiterating Dr. Mwanzu's speech is that in the era of open science, we need to have better ways of managing our data in order to make it more accessible. Whether we are using PIDs, which we are going to talk more about tomorrow, or whether you're using repositories, you need to be very pragmatic about how you manage your data. This is all about data governance, also at a policy level within your institution, having better policies that can support your ecosystem such that at the end of the day, you're able to make your work accessible and visible. I know we don't like talking about rankings, and because it's such a tethy topic, but then let's talk about rankings that rely on open data. And we have such ranking institutions like Leiden, like the Webometrics rankings. And what they actually look for is visible work. They want to look at, they want to look for information that is accessible on repositories. They want to look for they are looking for how data is shared, how data is used as well, or reused. So we are in an era where all of us agreed to sign on the recommendations of open science, and now we need to look at the practical elements on how do we have better governance, how do we have better data governance. So I will just get to my speech. I've just given you an overview because the experts, as Dr. Monza said, are here, and they will be taking us through how we can have better governance and improve our research data policies. So as research becomes increasingly data-driven, as I'd mentioned earlier, institutions need clear frameworks to guide how research data is collected, stored, documented, shared, protected, and preserved. Research data policies provide this foundation by establishing responsibilities, standards, and processes that support good data management practices across the institution. In many cases, the absence of clear policies leads to inconsistencies in how data is managed across departments and research projects. This can result in challenges around data ownership, ethical use, security, storage, and long-term preservation. A well-defined policy helps reduce these risks while strengthening trust, accountability, and compliance with funder institutional requirements. We're also witnessing a global shift towards open science, as I've mentioned just briefly, where transparency, collaboration, and responsible data sharing are becoming central to how research is conducted and evaluated. Within this movement, frameworks such as the FAIR principles are widely adopted, ensuring that research data is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, thereby increasing the value and visibility of research outputs. However, developing policy is only the first step. Effective implementation requires strong governance structures. This includes coordinating between research offices, libraries, ICT units, ethics committees, and senior leadership. These actors play a critical role in ensuring that policies are not only documented, but actively implemented, monitored, and continuously improved. It is also important to recognize that research data governance is not a one-size-fits-all approach. Institutions must design frameworks that reflect their specific contexts, resources, and priorities while aligning with global best practices. This balance is key to ensuring both relevance and sustainability. Across Africa, many institutions are at different stages of developing research data management systems. This creates a valuable opportunity for shared learning, collaboration, and capacity strengthening. By working together and leveraging existing tools and templates, institutions can accelerate progress without having to start from scratch. Ultimately, strong research data policies and governance frameworks to contribute to improved research quality, enhance collaboration, better compliance, and increase visibility and impact of African research. They also build institutional reliance by ensuring that valuable data sets are preserved and can be reused for future innovation. As we reflect on this topic today, I encourage us to view research data policy development not only as a technical requirement, but as a strategic enabler of research excellence, openness, and long-term institutional growth. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you so much for your time, and I will hand over to Nicole to introduce the subsequent speakers. Nicole?
Thank you so much, Ms. Joy, for that. I think I'll quickly call in next Dr. Agava, who is the Secretary of KLISC, so that he can give us an understanding of the current state of research data management in Kenya and what he thinks should be the next steps. Dr. Agava, you're welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Nicole, for the welcome. And colleagues, you're welcome to this session. Allow me to share my slides. Okay. Nicole, just confirm if they are visible from your end.
Yes, you can see it. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, good morning. Joy reached out to us as KLISC, and we felt that this is a very good opportunity to partner. As Professor Arnold has already introduced, we know Maria from Figshare, whom we have worked also closely, having attended one of our conferences within the country. And therefore, more or less, they understand the landscape of data in this country. And therefore, what I'll be sharing might not be very, very new, but this is just to create an awareness among all of us on what exactly do we need to do in view of the fact that this is the current area that people are talking about, and we need to expedite the processes of ensuring that our country is not just data sensitive, but also the practices around data are well adopted. Allow me to switch off my video to maximize on the bandwidth. So I carried out a study, which was my PhD thesis at the University of Pretoria in South Africa. And my main aim, when I saw there was a gap in data awareness in the country, and I tried to look at the landscape, and my thesis was on the feasibility of offering standardized data literacy services at selected private universities. After realizing that most of the university librarians or just staff within the library had no awareness of what data itself is and what they need to do. And therefore, borrowing from information literacy, I felt there is need to investigate the literacy levels on data among the university librarians and what could be the way forward. From the same thesis, I also extracted a paper that I published last year. That is Data Literacy and Output Focused Model to Guide Kenyan Academic Libraries, where I developed an output model or a framework that could be used to train university or librarians, both universities and whatever any other librarian within the country, on how to work with data, if I may say. And all these researches are available online. And in my presentation will amalgamate both the findings that I got from this particular research and the findings that I did a simple research recently for purposes of this particular study, and therefore I've tried to put them together. So, we are carrying out research. If you look at the institutional repositories that are around, you'll definitely understand that there is research that is taking place within this particular country. People are publishing, but where is the data that these people or these particular researchers have had access to or they have used? So in simple terms, that every day Kenyan research is generated. Unfortunately, the data disappears and no one knows where this particular data ends up. And we are realizing that we are sitting or losing a gem that will have been so beneficial, not just for these generations and for our institutions, but for generations to come. A gem that will inform more advanced research to be done in future. And that is the biggest challenge and the biggest gap that we are having. So this data is never stored, it's never shared, never is it being reused. And that's the reason why sometimes you hear, oh, this research has already been overdone. It's because that particular data is there or it has been existing, but no one is trying to use it. So where does your institutional research data go after a project ends? Or you yourself ask yourself, once you are done with your thesis, once you are done with any study that you are carrying out, where do you store your data? I know some of us light up very good big bonfires. For those who still archive their data as print copies, they light a bonfire and burn all these those papers. So less than 10%, less than 10% of public funded research in Sub-Saharan Africa is openly accessible, and this is according to SPAC. And so you can see we might not be the only ones, but this is something that is running across Africa. What is research data? Maybe we might need to start there as a way of understanding. So this is research data management. This is an active organization, storage, and preservation and sharing of research data through and beyond a project lifestyle. That is, I'm in a position to know which data am I looking for, and therefore I put into place all the systems and practices for purposes of ensuring that I collect good data. I adhere to all ethical principles that are involved for purposes while collecting this particular data. I'm able to analyze my data. I'm able to store my data, and where am I storing this particular data? And then in future, or I'm able to share this particular data. So this entire process is what we call research data management. All this is done for purposes of reproducibility. That is, we want others to be able to verify our research. We want others to be able to use this particular research. We want to be accountable. That's such that if somebody asks us, so what did you do? How did you get this particular finding? I'm able to go back and show that this is how I got this particular finding. It's also becoming a funder's mandate, because there are so many funders that today that are requesting. If you have ever done a research that was funded by USAID nowadays, or Belinda and Gates foundations, they are nowadays asking you to produce your data. That as you hand in the research itself, the findings, you are also handing in your raw data. However, also it's a Kenya's moment. It's right now. Most of the gaps that we are having as a country, as far as development is concerned, is because not that good research has been done, but because data has been collected, research has been done. It's rotting on a shelf in the university, and right now it's even getting consumed in our repositories. But the data that is available, no one is able to access that particular data and reuse it for purposes of maybe coming up with a better and good research. Sorry. So the Kenyan landscape, so far, we have more than 70 accredited universities in this country. And also we have, in these particular universities, you can see even there is a shortage of institutional repositories, because we have less than 30 institutional repositories. However, we have 4 key research sectors within the country. That is in terms of health, agriculture, environment, and social sciences. In all these, we have very active research funders within the country who are also asking for, who are requesting for data to be provided in terms of when they find you and you are carrying out this research. So where does this research data end up to? Where does it end? Because all these funders here have, in one way or another, funded 1 or 2 people to carry out research in this particular country. So where does this research, this data disappear to? We have a number of gaps that are currently existing, and we wish to look into. So we have 3 major gaps at the moment. When I was looking at the landscape in the country, one of the gaps is around infrastructure, which is very obvious as you look into it. So there's no national repository as far as Kenya is concerned, unless there's one that was set up yesterday after I had finished up with this particular slide. So Kenya has no national level research data repository, unlike institutions in countries like South Africa and the UK. They have developed themselves, and now they have research data repositories. I remember in my studies while in South Africa, our data itself, you have to present your data for purposes of it being archived in the national repository. We have an even storage infrastructure whereby this low bandwidth. People are saying that we don't have servers or enough space in our servers. Unfortunately, yes, we have provisions of cloud, but cloud access remain inconsistent across institutions, even though we have them available. Hosting companies are even available within the country nowadays, so it's not a big problem, but the uptake is still very, very low. And this is especially outside the center, the city center. There is no metadata standards, whereby the adoption of the Dublin Core, the data site, or domain-specific schemes is near absent across Kenyan universities. Even those who are trying to archive this data, they are not adhering to universal or global metadata standards that are available, and therefore somebody just has this data in his or her flash disk or server, and it appends to no rule at all as far as metadata standards are concerned. And then what will only exist at the moment infrastructure-wise is publication-only repositories. What Professor Arnold was indicating, that most of the institutions have repositories which only host the publications themselves. And then we have no anchor that is equivalent to it. So the continent only has South Africa's SADA, but in East Africa, we have nothing that is interoperable data infrastructure. So this is the biggest gap that we are at the moment experiencing as a country. Another gap that is existing is a policy gap. What we are seeing in terms of policy is just some patchwork of statements here and there that do not concretize, cannot be concretized as data policy, other than the Data Act that was passed some few years ago and is now being used in the country. And it's just this morning with Professor Arnold, and somebody was kind of taking some data somewhere, and we were asking ourselves, what happened with the Data Act in this particular country? Is it really being used? And this is very, very relevant here. So there's no national research data policy that exists in this country. The STI Act, the 2013 one, does not address the data life cycle that you can say we can make use of it. Very few universities have standalone research data management policies, and very few enforce them. And I think Joy you will agree with me in the findings that you received from the survey that you carried out. This was quite visible as far as having a research policy, and if they really the institutions are really enforcing these policies. Yes, we have ethics frameworks like NACOSTI have or KEBS have, but the focus is only on human subjects and no data at all. There's no mandatory data management plan from national funders. I don't know if NRF is really asking a funded researcher to provide data at the end of it. I stand to be corrected here. I seem to be blank on that. Data handling is left to individual researchers, is discretion. Whether you throw it away, whether you decide to archive it in your repository or whatever, this has been left to individuals. The result of this is that the research data is managed or mismanaged entirely at the discretion of the individual researchers, and therefore there is no institutional backstop. And where you can say that here is where we can go and get. And this is because this particular gap of the lack of a policy, lack of an outline written documentation that will definitely help manage research data is not there. We have some good practices outside there, continent-wise. We can borrow this from South Africa. Globally, we can borrow this from UK, the EU, and the US. And they have very good policies that we can look at. For anyone who wants to develop a such data management policy, those are some of the documents that will definitely appraise your team or yourself for purposes of ensuring that you have a good policy. So this policy as a gap is really quite evident. The last gap that I witnessed, and which I came across also while carrying out my thesis and my studies and while looking around, was capacity and skill deficits within the country. Whereby, according to AFL, only less than 15% of librarians within East Africa have, in one way or another, received an RDM training. And therefore, mostly there is a skill gap in this sense. So there's no RDM library curricula in universities, or we have so many library information science, LIS schools within the country, but how many of them have incorporated something to do with data in their curricula? I don't think is less than none. Libraries are excluded from research. It's only recently that the uptake as far as incorporating librarians in research is being taken up by institutions, especially universities, but it's not at the level of being very active and proactive in this sense, but it's at the level of what people are telling me is at the level of a faculty asking me, can you help us train our researchers on how to access library resources in the library? You know, that's the much they are able to involve the librarians. Or can you help our researchers run their documents through Turnitin or Drillbit? So these are the simplest ways that we are being involved in as librarians. FAIR principles are totally unknown. The findability, the accessibility, interoperability, and reusability. These standards are definitely, in most cases, unknown to a very large extent by most of the librarians. There is no data librarian roles, whereby there's dedicated RDM support units or data librarian positions are virtually non-existent in most of our universities or most of our libraries. We do not have a section that can just help librarians or researchers as far as data is concerned. We have no pathways for data librarians if one decides to become one. Systems librarian there and any other librarians, but do we have a career path for a data librarian? That is a big gap that is currently existing. So at the moment, we have the opportunities, and how do we do this? Opportunity window, and why now, and why we need to do that. There are some reasons here why Kenya's moment is now. One is the 2030 vision, which the government agenda prioritizes digital infrastructure, creating political will for investment. I think we can leverage on this for purposes of ensuring that our universities, our research institutions, our research departments are developing both the policy itself and also equipping librarians or equipping personnel for purposes of managing data. We have NACOSTI within the country, which has an open science policy whereby we can draft policy underway, whereby this is a rare window to shape the national RDM requirement from ground to going up. So NACOSTI can help us do something around this. We have international funder pressure whereby they are requesting researchers to provide data whenever they are publishing. Why also, whenever they have carried out research, why are we also not doing this in our institutions? That a student before graduation, particularly on a PhD level, why shouldn't they provide data, their data for purposes of ensuring that it is available for future? This is where we have seen cases of data having been cooked and then somebody just graduates. So can we take this particular moment and also request for this? We have Africa Connect and KNET, where this can help us expand broadband to universities, reduce the connectivity barrier for cloud-based data solutions. KNET is a key player and we can make good use of them. Under the AU, we have the AU Open Science Strategy 2024, which came out 2 years ago, whereby the continent is a continental framework that provides regional legitimacy and potential shared infrastructure partnerships. We can leverage on this for purposes of also ensuring that our country and our institutions have a good research data policy or framework. And then lastly, the library's unique position. We still play a very, very unique position. I always tell people, information literacy was placed on our doorsteps as libraries. We managed to run away with it. Repositories were placed on our doorstep. We managed to run away with it. OKID the same way. OJS was placed on our doorsteps. Why are we not running away with data research, data management policies and whatever? This is the librarians are very well equipped, and we can be in a position to carry out this. Institutional strengthening look like within the country, where we can create a data librarian role, that is establish a dedicated RDM support unit within the library, so that our first clients become the researchers that we have in our institutions. We have the possibility of doing that. We can adopt an institutional RDM policy, which will help us foster frameworks for that we can draft and pass policies through the Senate within 12 months or whatever. I think if this comes as a forceful documentation from our end, one of the biggest challenges we have is that we sit in some of these committees, some of these senates, but we do not really push for policies. Why don't we come up with these policies, partner with research departments and help, and then we back each other for purposes of approving these documents within the Senate. We need to integrate RDM training in our institutions, in our programs, in our capacity building programs, even in our own curriculum in universities, library science departments. Why don't we include and integrate RDM training? We can build repository infrastructure. The systems librarians are in our libraries now, and they are doing very good job. They are doing a very wonderful job. Why don't we also tap into their capability for purposes of ensuring that we're able to build RDM or research data repositories infrastructure within the libraries? We can embed librarians in research teams. In the departments of research or offices of research, we can have one librarian who is a liaison personnel now to the research, and who will be able to find out what are the new things, what are the new developments within that particular department that the library could pick up and help them and run away with them. So if we can have a liaison personnel from the library side and let because you as a university librarian might not be in a position to sit in all these Senate, UMB, and so forth. But if we can have a contact person within those particular areas, I think that can work out. And then lastly, we can build a KLISC community of practice which can coordinate across Kenyan university libraries and share tools, policies, training, and infrastructure. KLISC has done a very wonderful job. I'm not just saying this because I'm the national secretary. I'm saying this from a point of we have managed to coalesce so many things and so many national events that we can promote through KLISC. And therefore, KLISC can work out as a contact point whereby we can channel even the training of librarians on data literacy, and I think this will be something that is achievable. What is your role, the librarian as an RDM champion? What actions you can be as a champion around this, whereby you can audit your institution, map your institution's current data practices and repository capacity baseline for before strategies. Find out what is going on in your institution as far as research data management is concerned. Are they doing something? Does a policy exist? If a policy doesn't, which infrastructure is available for me to use so that I may help researchers as far as research data is concerned? Engage with your research office, advocate for institutional data policy, bring a draft and timeline, not just the requests. Especially some people fear to start up a policy, benchmark with other institutions, borrow ideas. We have national documents that are available. I've just indicated to you which ones are also global and that you can borrow from. Once you do that, you can help even the research office come up with a policy, or you can come up with a joint policy, both the library and the research office, and come up with a joint policy that is moving research data management within your institution. Access-free training, AFOL provides these trainings, foster, and the carpentries that are also available online. I'm very sure Joy can share with us which are some of the free trainings that are available online. Maria can also do the same, so that we equip ourselves. The capacity gap that we are witnessing should not just be because I am waiting for somebody or an institution to do this for me, but I can also work out to do this. And lastly, we can connect via KLISC, join regional open science networks, share tools. Come to our conferences, workshops. We have some of these presentations that are being done, and I think this can be something that we can borrow from. So lastly is that Kenyan research data is a national asset. We cannot deny this. And it's a loss that losses that we are making as institutions within this particular country. And therefore, we need to be on the front line as university librarians, as librarians in any other capacity to ensure that we leave no one behind. We have one conversation, we have one policy proposal, we have one training enrollment, so that everybody is brought on board for purpose of ensuring that research data is managed very well within our institutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Agawa, for that detailed presentation. We truly appreciate that. Any questions for Dr. Agawa, please put them in the chat and he'll address them. Next, I want to invite Dr. Mark, who is the Vice President on Open Research from Digital Science, to give us his presentation on unlocking the value of research data foundations of open science. Welcome, Dr. Mark.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. I was looking this morning at photos from the KLISC fifth event last year, and it's good to see familiar faces. Fantastic talks to follow on from as well. A lot of the actual practical how do we do this has been covered, which I love to see. So I am just going to zoom out a little bit and talk about why I think this is important, why your researchers will think this is important, and hopefully the good folks we've heard from already who've talked about a lot of these things can lead the way in making sure that researchers are making data openly available and that Kenyan libraries get to see the benefits of it all. Because, as you all know, the amount of publication outputs is growing year on year. We're seeing lots and lots and lots of publications being made available. But you may not be aware of the amount of data that is being made available. And so we do a survey every year called the State of Open Data, where we try and look at what researchers think, what their attitudes and opinions are towards making data openly available, because we'd be lying if we said, if you just provide a tool for them to make their data available, they'll do it every day because they want to. They have a lot of other work to do. They're very busy people. And if you are asking more of them, they will always push back and say, but why? What's in it for me? And how is this going to help me? Some of them will do it for the moral good, but we can give them ammunition for all of these things. So if we look at the survey and understand what the blockers are, the biggest one we see every year is credit. So that what I just said, research is saying, if I make my data available, what's in it for me? So the two ways we try and address this are we try and make it super easy for them to do this. Upload your files, add some metadata, make it publicly available. Provide a service to them, provide somebody to walk them through. The talks I've already heard today is what the researchers need to hear, and they'll be good to go. But we see that this is a problem. So what's really interesting is now we're at the point of data publication maturity that we're starting to see funders say, if we fund you, you have to make your data available, and we're going to give you credit for making your data available. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the next 5 minutes. I'll only do a short talk to try and catch up some of the time. And what I think is driving a lot of this is AI. But we'll talk about that as well, because there's also important conversations about how Kenya is being represented in the AI models, how you are making sure that your local data is driving local decisions, and we're not looking at everything from a global viewpoint, how you are protecting and licensing your research data to make sure that all of the credit flows through. So we do see that when it comes to credit, there is evidence already that you can tell researchers. So again, a lot of researchers don't know this because they're focused very specifically on their work in their research field. So They don't know that if you make your data available when you publish a paper, it's associated with a 25% increase in citations to the paper. So forget about getting citations and credit for your data to begin with. If you make your data available in a repository that we help you with, then your papers will get more citations. I think this is to do with, it's more transparent. People trust the research more because they can see the data behind it, or they can build on top of it directly. We also see every year that support is not making its way to those who need it. So we ask these questions of a global audience, and we see everybody everywhere would like more support, more hand holding. There's a lot of new terminology for a lot of researchers. You publish your data and you can choose the license. We heard Professor before talking about Creative Commons. That's a new term to a lot of researchers. So just very simply saying, the CC BY license means if you make your data available, other people can use it, but they have to give you credit for it. They have to give you the citation. So just talking researchers through these points is super helpful. When we ask what areas you need help with, I just mentioned licensing of data. That's a super easy one to start with in that it's a scary topic. But if you say you can pick a license that means that other people can use your work, but you get credit for it, this is the one to choose. That's super helpful. The issue about finding time to manage my data, what the data management policies are. Data management policies, you can educate your researchers and say this is what is expected of you. The librarians have that role. Finding time to manage my data. Oof, I wish we all could find some more time. I don't have the solution to that one. But it's, maybe we can use the AI tools to speed up our workflows. It's also really interesting to know that there are different attitudes and opinions in different countries. So obviously, I'm not suggesting that Ethiopia is fully representative of Africa, but we do see regional continental trends, and I'll touch on a little bit of that in the next few minutes. Um, and so it's interesting to see that in this, where we picked 10 countries that were publishing a lot of research, we saw that Ethiopia had the most support for researchers saying, we want to make our data available. We see it's useful. In Oriental Asia, in China and Japan, there's a lot more concern. So it's obviously different levels of education and engagement from librarians is leading to different outcomes. Also, to be aware, I think this is related to the timescale thing. We picked 3 of those countries and just looked linearly. When you ask, how supportive are you of a national mandate to make your data openly available? It's starting to come down. And that's, I think, because a lot of researchers are now having to do this. This idea of, do you think that open data is a good thing so we can build on top of the research that's gone before so we can get faster medicines and cure disease? Yeah, that's an easy thing to get behind, right? Everybody's going to get behind that. Okay, now you need to spend an extra 30 minutes every week making your data available. Well, hold on. I'm not as enthusiastic as I once was. And so that's something that we need to be aware of, right? It's not a magic solution. When there's people involved, when there's researchers involved, and we're asking researchers for their time, we need to be upfront and say, this is for greater good for you, and the greater good for our university, and the greater good for Kenyan research, and the greater good for humanity. We'll get those cures from diseases too. So I mentioned AI. This is the thing that's driving everything in terms of moving further faster with research. And so why is an open data strategy necessary? Well, we've seen the incredible benefits of making data openly available. So there's a protein data bank archive in Europe where people were measuring protein structures and how they fold. And what we see here is it's very expensive. It was very hard to do. And then AI came along in the form of Google AlphaFold, and they have been able to solve this whole field of research. They won the Nobel Prize for it. So we're seeing Nobel Prizes giving out for AI that's building on top of data. And we'd like to see some of them coming from Kenya. We'd like to see Kenya getting that research data openly available and people building on top of it. In order for the machines to build on top of it, data needs to be fair. This is a term we've already heard about today. Findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So keep pushing that messaging to researchers. In terms of your university, it's great to, work at the global level, but we're seeing that funders are coming out with policies, their mandates, then compliance for the mandates, and then measuring the mandates. This is the way which we make societal changes in research. In terms of measurement, there is a new data citation corpus, which is saying from DataCite, these papers link to these data sets. So just like you have H-index and citation counts for papers, we're now starting to see citation counts for research data. If you have a Figshare repository, we track views, downloads, citations, and altmetric scores, so you'll already have that. But what's really important here is that now everybody globally can do this, and funders are starting to rank. I know we said we don't like rankings before, we don't, but it's good to see what's happening on a global level. This is the percentage of papers that link to a data set. It's a very messy graph, I apologize for that. And you can see different countries are going at different speeds. This is for the very large publications of papers every year. Countries, if we just zoom out a little bit and look at countries with less publications, you will see Sweden was the top one in that last graph. Kenya, Zambia, Malawi, Uganda, all doing better or as good. Obviously, it's a smaller scale. It's harder to do things at a big scale, but we're seeing that Africa has a great lead here. Kenya is on top of things. So when the NIH comes to Figshare and says, can you start tracking for all of our departments how data is going, we know that we can tell them it's going up, but we know they're following this path of policy, mandate, compliance, and measurement. And they have an award coming out. This is the National Institute of Health in America, which is saying, we are going to reward you in funding if you have good data sharing practices. So now those researchers can get that credit for their research and use it to advance their career. So you can say, the funders are starting to say, if you make your data available, you will be treated favorably going forward. So I just wanted to finish here by saying it's important if we look at a heat map of what I was showing you in those very messy graphs a moment ago, the percentage of papers that link to data sets in countries that publish more than 1,000 papers per year, the more you are towards gold or yellow in this chart, the better you're doing. The more towards purple, the worse you're doing. So you can see the areas that needs more help than others. You can see the areas where you may have thought they're doing very well, but I just wanted to highlight that the countries here that are publishing more than 1,000 papers a year that are doing well in Central and Eastern Africa should continue. You already have great leverage. You have the community behind you. So it is a huge opportunity. And it sounds like everybody on this call is doing everything they can to continue to grasp that opportunity to really improve the standings in rankings that we don't care about, but in impact for Kenyan research going forward. And that is everything from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark, for that presentation. We truly appreciate you. Any questions for Mark, please put them in the chat and he'll address them. So
Just trying to stop
our
sharing.
next present, it's okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Miss Maria Cotera. She's a research workflow solutions manager at Digital Science, and she's going to be talking to us on from data to discovery, maximizing your research impact. So she's just going to give us a bit more understanding on Figshare before we go on to the next presentation. Welcome, Maria.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Nicole. Can you see my presentation all right?
Yes, I can see it. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm very excited to be here today. This is actually my third opportunity to speak to librarians from Kenya. As Professor Arnold mentioned at the beginning, I went to the conference for the first time in 2024. That was in Nakuru, which I loved. And I spoke about capacity and skills for this new open science things that are coming. And some of the things that he also spoke about, and also Dr. Arnold mentioned. But I then last year was in Nairobi and we had a presentation together with CCT with Joy, and we talked a little bit more about open science and repositories. And this time I'm going to talk a little bit more about Figshare, but especially from the angle of discovery, from data to discovery, maximizing research impact, because this is what we've been hearing already today. And I really love the beginning of the presentation from Dr. Gaba when he said, every day Kenyan researchers generate data that disappears. So that is really sad, and it's something that obviously as librarians you can help with. I want to start by saying that although I now work for digital science and I am the research workflow solutions manager, which means I look after the repository and also our KLISC system, our research management system. I'm also a librarian and a former academic librarian. I work in academia for many years. Everything that I do and everything that I share is informed by that. I'm still very active in the profession. I work within IFLA groups, and and I consider myself for and foremost a librarian working in a company, but with the same aims and objectives as you. This is the agenda for today for my presentation. I'm going to start by talking a little bit about infrastructures for research data and the transition into open science. I'm going to touch on the FAIR principles that have been mentioned already a couple of times. I'm going to mention what data repositories are, and then I will talk about the what. What is Figshare? Explain that Figshare is part of the larger ecosystem and how we benefit from that. Just touch on what Figshare is as a repository, and then I'll talk about the from data to discovery. So I will mention the how do you publish in Figshare, and how do you amplify your research impact, and I finish on the why. Why does it matter? Lots of people have already talked about that, but that is the most important point. So, starting with infrastructures for research data, we are seeing the transition into open science. And everything I have put in here is what I'm going to speak about. I wanted to write it down as well because there's a lot of content, I know, but I am conscious that for people that want to just review the presentations, it's important to have all this content. So the point is that your universities, every university, maintains multiple infrastructures to support research activities. Then there is research-intensive universities. Those universities that are larger, they have more research units within the faculties, or institutions that are future-focused, or which already have in their strategy that to transition from supporting open access to supporting open science, or are thinking about it, or have future focused professionals in there. So those are the institutions that we want to tap into. These are the ones that they're thinking about open science, they're thinking about responsible research, and they're thinking about offering data repositories to the research communities. Many institutions around the world have not moved from providing institution repositories or open access publications, and they some either have institutional repositories plus data repositories. In South Africa, for example, that's the model. And if we have time, I can show you the page where you can go and access all of those. Some are already making accessible the full institutional repositories that are publications and data in one single place. And in the UK and Australia, this is the model that we are moving to. And these models enable researchers to share the data and all the supplementary materials that they gave rise to the publications and to link everything together, centralizing the research outputs. That enhances research visibility and showcases institutional excellence. And that's the point. And I think Dr. Mark had made that point very clear why this is important. I wanted to touch into the FAIR principles and how they link to data repositories. You probably have heard about the FAIR principles. If not, please go and learn a bit more about them. But Mark also mentioned them, definable by people and machines. And I have the same people and machines that he had in his slide. We always use this because we need to remember machines are super important. So all the metadata that we have in our repositories needs to be findable, not just by people, but also by machines. So then it's discoverable. So how we make it findable via the relevant metadata and persistent identifiers that enable discoverability. And I know that tomorrow you will be talking more about persistent identifiers, but that is the F in findable. Then we have accessible. And even when data is restricted, data can be accessed through open, free, and universal standard protocols. Again, using the persistent identifiers like the DOIs, and it's important that we understand that all the data, even data that can be restricted within the repository because it might have some restrictions to it, can be embargoed, but is still available to retrieve. Not to see in open access, but to retrieve. Interoperable. It has to be interoperable with other university systems and wider research systems, with your CRIS systems or your RIS systems if you have them, with global indices, with library discovery platforms, so it can be surfaced, it can be reused. And reuse is the last bit. The data that can be deposited by a simple, intuitive, and frictionless deposit for all types and sizes of research outputs, including data openly. So it can be reused via these Creative Commons or other licenses that were mentioned a few times. Professor Arnold mentioned them, and Dr. Markham also mentioned them. And it's important that we understand that these FAIR principles guide a data repository. Figshare is part of a larger ecosystem. We're part of digital science. Dr. Mark is the founder of Figshare. He founded Figshare when he was a researcher himself at Imperial College London, and he needed a repository to put his outputs for his PhD. And now we have evolved since then. Digital Science was founded in 2010. It started as an incubator of research solutions. Figshare was incorporated to that. And it has grown into being a fully fledged company, but we are driven by a very clear mission. And in our vision, we have a future where a trusted, frictionless, collaborative research ecosystem drives progress for all. We need to make sure that everything that we do supports the whole research ecosystem. Our values align with your values. As I said, Dr. Mark is a researcher, was a researcher, continues researching. I'm a librarian. I continue being a librarian because I continue being active, speaking, being informed, supporting others by providing training and capacity building. So we are all in the same ecosystem and we're driven by the same vision and we have the same desire to support the ecosystem. Other solutions that are part of digital science that interoperable with Figshare are symplectic elements or KLISC systems, as I mentioned earlier, and two that I'm going to speak about today, dimensions and all-metric. Overleaf is also there. Overleaf is for researchers themselves rather than at the institutional level. But dimensions and all-metric are the important ones today. Dimensions, I hope that you are all familiar with. Dimensions is provided as part of Research for Life to Kenyan researchers, and it's available. And TCC Africa and Joy have been doing a lot of training on how to access and use Dimensions. It's the largest database of index content, includes not only papers, but also grants, and it's important to see where the grants and the funding is and starts interlinking everything together, and also other things like clinical trials and data sets. It's largest at Web of Science or Scopus that you might be very familiar with, and includes more outputs from Africa. And this is important as well, especially for you. It's more likely that your content from your institutions is going to be indexed in dimensions that in the other databases. And all metric measures the impact of research by alternative metrics. So no citation counts like dimensions, but citations in social media, citations in policy papers, in the press. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but let's move on. So what is Figshare as a repository? I'm just going to be very brief and say it's a cloud-based platform for publishing research data. We're talking about curated data here, not necessarily raw data. There is storage for raw data, but this is data that has been curated, that has very clear metadata, so it's discoverable and it can be reused. Figshare enables open research by making this data discoverable and citable, as I mentioned. Everything receives the DOI when it's published, a persistent identifier, and is preserved longer term. And it features things like usage stats and metric tracking to improve global impact. There is a very simple workflow that enhances collaboration and supports researchers working in research groups and sharing their data within their own research groups. There is also workflows that enable curation, so you can either allow your researchers to publish the data directly into the repository, give the metadata, receive the DOI, and publish, and that's it. And it's non-mediated by the librarians. It's just get published into the institutional repository. Or you can have a curated workflow where the librarian is the mediator and you have this role to supervise the quality of the metadata. So in that case, the researcher publishes, you receive a notification, your administrator in the repository receives a notification, it goes, checks through the metadata, make sure that all the files are correct, that everything is named properly, whatever checks you need to do, that is published in the right group within the repository. If it's not, there is an opportunity for the administrator to come back to the researcher and ask to make changes or make the changes themselves. And then once everything is correct, it gets published. So these are the two types of ways. But in a quick comparison, we'll say why Figshare or why any other data repository. In the old way, or the current way in many cases, the data sits on a lost USB drive or any other drive, in memory sticks, anywhere. Nobody can check or reuse and cite the data that has already been produced. This is what Dr. Agaba was mentioning, never stored, never shared, never reused. So the work stays in silence, it's not discoverable, nobody can reuse it, it's just a bit of waste. In the Figshare way, the data is preserved forever with the DOI. There is usage stacks that prove your impact to funders, but also anybody else, but obviously funders, the ones that give you the money to do the research in the first place, or give your researchers the money to do the research in the first place. And also, something I want to mention is the social sharing that puts your work in the global spotlight. And this is what is important as well. So let's talk about this bit, the from data to discovery, how to maximize the research impact of your researchers. So publishing in Figshare is as easy as 3 clicks. And I always say, if somebody can upload the photo to Facebook, they can publish in Figshare. It's as simple as that. Figshare showcases all types of outputs. So whatever files you have, whether your data or your researcher's data is a video, a spreadsheet, an audio file, a graph, code, whatever it is, it can get into Figshare. It's a comprehensive repository that is designed to enhance the work of all academics, from those just starting their careers to established experts. So that is a great equalizer. Anybody in your institution that you give access to the repository is able to then deposit. I have put in there how to deposit. It's just so simple that I don't think I need to explain it. There is a screenshot of how the interface looks like internally. So you can either drag and drop and pull the files wherever they are into the browser, or you can browse for the folders or browse for the files, and you just upload them. Then to describe it, you fill in the metadata, which is the same as saying, hello, I'm in Nakuru, I'm watching the flamingos. It's all the same. It takes minutes. And then if there is a mediated workflow that has been set up by the library, you submit for review, or your researcher submit for review. And then once it's approved, the output receives the unique identifier, the DOI, and that's it. The data gets published and it becomes citable and it becomes discoverable. The public landing page. Again, I'm not going to show the whole landing page. I just want to make sure that we understand, and this is where the other solutions in the digital science ecosystem comes into place. We have the usage metrics in the landing page of every research output, and this comes from dimensions. So in here, in this particular one, you can see all the views, all the downloads, all the citations. If you were to click on the citation, it will take you straight to the citation. So you can see all the citations, all these 385 citations in dimensions. It takes you into dimensions. And you don't need to, you have to register, but you don't need to have a subscription for that. You can see it is freely available. So you can see exactly how many people have viewed and downloaded an output. And obviously this changes over time. So this is connected with dimensions in the backend. It's synchronized. There's a small lag, I have to say. No, it's not that every time that somebody cites something appears immediately, but over time you will see how the citation count increases. So you will see when other researchers credit the data that has been published in your repository into their own papers. And then there is the all-metric donut. This is how we call it, the donut. And different colors means different things. But in here we can see there is a count, 37, and it shows this is how many citations, but it tracks what we call the buzz. So it's how many news outlets pick up the study. Is it cited in a policy brief, perhaps? Has it been used to register a patent? All of this is collected. Every time that is discussed in social media, the account augments. Everything is tracked there in almost real time again. And again, if you were to click on it in a live repository, you will be taken directly into all metric, and it will show you exactly what the count is, and it will show you if it's, for example, in the news, it will tell you what news it is, the piece of news, and you can actually read it. So it's just unbelievable how you can track back all the usage metrics. So all this published data is featured on a dedicated, prominent landing page, and it's all comprehensively displayed, all publicly available metadata, making it the central point for the data, not just a storage link. There is something else that I wanted to mention, which is how Figshare makes it easy to shout about your work, on your researchers' work. It has built-in social media icons to post the DOI directly into platforms such as LinkedIn or X or Twitter or Blue Sky now. So why do you say that? Because every time your link is shared or discussed online, your Altmetric score increases. I just saw you that. So high Altmetric scores lead to higher discoverability, leads to more citations. So then your researchers are not just researchers, are a global recognized contributor. And this slide comes from a presentation that my colleague Mary Farrell, who is our global engagement lead for Figshare and the other products, did for researchers a couple of months ago in a university in South Africa. So that's why he's talking about researchers. But you can also do that for your researchers. So in some of the universities that have Figshare data repositories, they might pick specific outputs that are already in the repository that have very, they want to enhance the discoverability, or for whatever reason, it has been picked by a policy paper, for example, and you can just post it in your social media, share it, post it in LinkedIn, post it in whatever social media the library holds. So I'm going to finish why does it matter? Well, it matters because your research brings diversity to global research. We want your research, the research coming out from Kenya. It drives open research forward globally. It's important. Helps to debias global North research and supports equitable research, supports reproducibility and innovation. It helps solve local as well as global challenges. So your research is the best research for you, for your communities, and it helps bridge the gap with the Sustainable Development Goals. And we know that the gap is still very wide, so your research supports that. It positions your local research community as producers, not just subjects or consumers of research. Good quality research, I have put in there, and it's very important. Strengthens compliance with national and international funding mandates, and both Dr. Agaba and Dr. Mark had mentioned that, the funding mandates and how it's important. And also for your institutions, it's important to remember that it attracts international students and research collaborators. And that increases the visibility of your institutions, increases the visibility of the library within the institutions. And I want to finish with this that was mentioned right at the beginning by Professor Arnold. It moves Kenya to the next level, which is what you're trying to do. So I leave you with this. I said that if I had time, I will post the link to the repositories in Figshare for South Africa, but I think I will do that at the end. And I think it's very exciting that we have an actual research data services librarian speaking next. So I want to make sure that we have time for her. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, for that detailed presentation. I think we quickly move over to, let me remember how to pronounce her name again, Miss Ney from Stellenbosch University Library. You're welcome to give your presentation.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, colleagues. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Please just give me an indication if it's up.
It's loading. Yeah, it's good. All good.
Oh, okay. I can't see it on my side.
Wait, I've opened your browser. I can see your browser.
The Sun Scholar data.
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you so much, colleagues. Good day, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to share the Stellenbosch University's experience. So today I will be presenting a case study of SunScholar Data, which is our university's institutional research data repository. This presentation focuses on how research data services were developed at Stellenbosch University, the challenges that led to the establishment of stronger research data management practices, the importance of institutional collaboration in supporting researchers through their research lifecycle. I do want to reiterate that while this presentation focuses mainly on SunScholar data, what I really want to highlight is that research data services are more about people, the partnership, the governance, as much as they are about the technology. And before I continue, let me just quickly introduce myself. Sorry about that. I am the newly appointed research data service librarian for the Stellenbosch University Library, and my role basically entails helping researchers on how they could better manage their research data from start until the end of the project. Before we continue, it's very important to understand what research data really is. I remember with me when I was first introduced to the concept of data repositories, I had a lot of confusion because we were already, familiarizing ourselves with institutional repositories that would actually house the thesis and the dissertation. And now having data repositories coming into play, there was a bit of confusion there. So I remember the colleagues that have already shared some lights regarding what data really is. And maybe just to add on that and also to show you a visual presentation of what research data is, I would like to quickly show you one of my personal favorite data sets that is stored in our data repository. So this is basically SunScholar data, where we store the data sets provided by the Stellenbosch University or affiliated researchers. I'll just show you. So in the meantime, just to shed some light, when we talk about research data, it's basically anything that is produced during your research collection or data collection. We are talking about research or interview recordings. We are talking about codes for IT students. We are even talking about videos. So basically with this, it was a data set where the scientists, they wanted to prove that the sheep mother can in fact recognize their sheeps based on the scent. So I'm just gonna quickly show you one video without really having to go in detail with it. Okay. So if you're interested, I will be posting or providing the DOI link to this so that you can have a look. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting study that was conducted. Okay, so now from the beginning. Sorry about that. I've already introduced myself. So to understand why research data management became such a priority at the Stellenbosch University, it is very helpful to start with a real incident. So we had a researcher who was working with highly sensitive financial data that was subject to strict confidentiality agreements. So basically, they were collecting data from one of the companies that dealt with finance. So in this case, they were subjected to confidentiality agreements where the agreement was entered by the researcher and actually the organization that was providing the data. So the company provided conditions into how the data must be shared, especially with sensitive data. If a researcher is collecting data from your hospitals, if they're collecting data from kids, that data is very sensitive. So that is why we have conditions in place that will actually govern the use of that data. So the company provided the conditions into how the data must be shared, password protected, having to remove the personal identifier. So those were the conditions that were in place. So the data, sometimes they will tell you that it has to be shared in a secured repository. So the data was being shared through a cloud-based platform. And at one point, the researcher discovered that the folders which had the data appeared to be empty. So naturally, there were concerns about a possible data breach and significant legal implication. So as a result, this issue was escalated to our senior IT management and Microsoft to actually investigate what happened. And then this triggered a late night emergency email to the senior director of the IT. And as the potential legal and reputational consequences for the university were massive. So our IT team immediately contacted Microsoft, who then escalated the issue to a 24/7 global priority status. And after about a week or so, of testing, Microsoft actually confirmed that it was a synchronization error and not a malicious breach. Okay, so basically this whole scenario, it demonstrated that we really need strong research data management in place, and that it could not be handled by individual departments working individually. So as you can see, the silos. At the time, we had different units that were addressing different aspects of data management. As you can see, the library, we were promoting research data management practices where IT was responsible for the technical infrastructure. And then we also had the legal contracts team that were managing the contracts and also the compliance issues. So the incidents really highlighted the need for a coordinated institutional approach. Okay, and at that time, we had other several factors that were increasing the urgency of research data management at Stellenbosch. I mean, we had the POPIA requirements, which took effect in 2020, if I'm not mistaken, which mandated that personal or even research-related data should be collected, stored, and shared ethically and lawfully. So therefore, it was of utmost importance for Stellenbosch to ensure that it enhances research data services system so that the sensitive data produced during data collection is compliant with the POPIA requirements. We also had the funders' mandate. If we look nowadays, most of the funders are requesting that the data management plans are mandatory. So with the data management plans, the researcher basically states how the research is going to be managed, how it's going to be accessed and stored. And also we had a significant pressure due to the growing open science movement. And also we participated in the ILUFU project, where it was a national collaboration between South African institutions where they worked together to develop shared practices, tools, and infrastructure that will enhance research data management. So together, all of these developments created both institutional and external pressures to establish a formal research data management framework at Stellenbosch. And in response then, Stellenbosch University began developing a formal research data management regulation. This was initiated by our ICT in research committee, which is a formal Senate subcommittee. So the decision was to create a regulation rather than a simple guideline, reflecting the university's commitment to ensuring accountability, compliance, and also sustainability. So just in brief, the research data management includes the ownership and responsibility, basically who owns the data. And with data that is produced by Stellenbosch affiliated researchers, the institution will then own the data. In the data management regulation, there's also ethical consideration to say, especially getting informed consent. You cannot just perform or do research without getting the consent from the participants. It also highlights the intellectual property of who owns the data. There's also storage and access levels, there's retentions and distractions. So there's basically a whole sections on how Stellenbosch contributes to research data management. Okay, and we knew that for this regulation to work, it could not just come from the administration team only, being the library, the IT, and the legal services. It had to be a collaborative efforts. So therefore, several meetings were held. It was revised a lot of times, and it was changed through the feedback that we received from the participants. So these sessions were mainly active with the researchers, with the vice deans of research, with the faculty champions within the universities, including fields such as science, agriculture, and medicine. So this really helped to ensure that the regulation was practical and also responsive to the real research needs. And a regulation is only as good as the responsibilities it assigns. So the SU Research Data Management Regulation, it provides a framework that defines the role of university members to ensure that data always has a steward. First, it establishes the principal investigator as the primary data steward. Furthermore, the Information Technology Division, which is to provide secure infrastructure, active data management platforms, and also technical security advice. And we also have the Division of the Information Governance within the Division for Research Development, which is also responsible for managing data, privacy regulations, personal information, and handling any data breaches. And also the Division for Research Development and the Library Information Service, which handles the regulation formation, the ethics, research contracts, and the institutional awareness. So all in all, we have three pillars, which is the RDM Advisory Group, the Research ICT Service Desk, and also the Library and Information Service. And through these three pillars, that is when we were able to enhance the research data management in Stellenbosch. So if we can just look at the function of each pillar, the RDM Advisory Group. So this basically supports researchers that are affiliated with Stellenbosch universities. So this group basically brings together the expertise from the library, the IT, the ethics, the legal service, and also the research support structures. And researchers are able to submit complex or very difficult queries and receive coordinated advice from the multiple stakeholders. And the second pillar being the Research ICT Service Desk, which is our technical gatekeeping. So this pillar basically plays an important role in ensuring that research technologies comply with the institutional requirements. Now, the importance of this, for instance, when a researcher is asking if they can use a Google Drive or a random survey platform to collect data. Our ICT will evaluate that request against the research data management regulation. So they check if it complies with POPIA. They check the security protocols, and they ensure that only vetted tools are used for institutional research. If a valid justification can be provided for the use of non-institutional approved tools, then the RDM group will consider the request and, if required, ask for additional information to make informed decisions. And our third pillar is actually the library and the information services, which plays a role in supporting the research life cycle from the beginning until the end. We have a research data service division, which is led by Dr. Siviwe Bangani. So I am also part of this section or division. This division offers researcher training and consultation, and we also have 2 service platforms. The first platform is data management plans, which is through the Sun DMP powered by Fair Wizard. And as I've already mentioned before, as per funders' requirements, they actually make it mandatory for researchers to submit a data management plan. So at Stellenbosch, we do have a software system for that, which is our Sun DMP. And we also have Sun Scholar Data. We provide consultation and training for our researchers in how they can preserve and share their data through Sun Scholar Data, which is, of course, powered by Figshare. And the library acts as the steward of research lifecycle. And interestingly, our implementation of the Sun Scholar Data was initiated in 2018 or 2019, if I'm not mistaken. And its adoption was mainly because we had joined the ILIFU project. However, eventually formalizing the library's role through the regulation allowed us to successfully apply for the COTRA seal certificate, which gives the repository global credibility. Okay, so basically this slide summarizes how the various support structures work together. We have the advisory group, which would receive complex query solutions. We have the IT desk, which basically provides technical, security, and infrastructure support. We have the librarians or the library section, which is the stewardship. And together, these structures create an integrated support environment for research data management at Stellenbosch University. So as I finish, the key lesson from Stellenbosch University experience is that a repository alone is not enough. Successful research data management also depends on the collaboration between the researchers, the library, the IT services, the legal aspects, the governance structures, and also the institutional repositories. In conclusion, the success of Sun Scholar Data is not simply the result of technology. It's the result of the collaboration, institutional collaboration, clear governance that were in place, defined responsibilities, shared commitments to responsible research data management. The Stellenbosch University's experience demonstrates that breaking down institutional silos is very important for building sustainable and trusted research data services. Thank you so much. I will now pause my presentation.
Thank you so much, Kilongwana. And are there any questions or comments for her? Okay, good. Right now, we will get into and if there are any questions, as we had said, please put it in the chat and we'll be able to we'll be able to answer them. Now that we are done with our sessions, kindly go through this interactive session. We'll have about 5 minutes. Go through the interactive session, and there's a Google Doc that I've shared with you in the link, where we are going to discuss, where we want to hear your views on what is driving your desire to support your faculty and postgraduate students to share their data openly. So let me give you 5 minutes to fill that up as we are going to work on the key takeaways from this webinar. Kindly start filling it in. Here it is. It's in the chat. And this is what you have. Okay. Give you 5 minutes based on the conversations and the presentations from Maria, Klongwana, Mark, and even Agava. What do you think it will drive your desire to support your faculty and postgraduate students to share their data openly? Please fill in the information and share with me your views. Then we'll discuss this. And also from the comments from Dr. Mwanzi as well. Okay. I'll be on blank as you continue.
Ms. Joy, please check your message. I've alerted you on something.
Sure. Okay. 5 minutes. And before we wind up, I will give a summary of what your views are, and then Maria will come in to share to show South African Research Data Repository as well. Okay. Let's hear your views. Okay, I can see the comments coming in. Yeah, you want your data validated, fair principles. Good. Please continue. These are really good points. These are very good points. Please continue. You've got 2 more minutes. Then we can hand over to Maria, and then I'll give a summary of all this, and then we are done for the day. 2 more minutes. This has been a very fruitful community call. Thank you so much for making it. 2 minutes, please. Two minutes. Okay, 1 minute left. Wow. 1 minute left, colleagues. 1 minute. Okay. And time is up. Before I read the reviews and comments that you have shared, I'd like to hand over to Maria. Maria?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Joy. I wanted to address some of the questions that have been put in the chat because obviously we have encouraged people to ask questions in the chat. So there's a couple of questions and I want to start by that. The first one says, should repository success be measured by quantity of deposited data or by the actual reuse and societal impact? So thank you, Pascal, for the question. It's a very good question, actually. And I think the answer is not just up to me, anybody else in the panelists can comment, but I'm going to start by saying both. You have to have quantity of deposited data. You have to have enough data to be able to sustain the repository, especially in a model like Figshare, which is a software as a service where you are actually holding, we are holding the platform for you. There is a subscription fee. And so you have to have enough researchers actually depositing data in the repository for it to be sustainable. You want to encourage quantity. That's important. But obviously, the most important part is the reuse and the societal impact. And Figshare has a reporting platform. There are tools where you can actually see the impact of your research. There is heat maps. There is maps where you can see which kind of countries are accessing your research, where the other people are accessing from, what type of outputs are being viewed and reused. So it's important you also measure it, measure the impact, and obviously the metrics that I mentioned as well. But yes, absolutely. The quantity is important, so it's sustainable, but the most important bit is the reuse and the societal impact. So thank you for the question. I don't know whether anybody else has any comments to that question. Anyone else from my fellow panelists would like to comment on whether the repository success should be measured by the quantity or the reuse and societal impact? No, I don't see any comments. So I am going to move on to the next question, which is publishing in Figshare free? There is two platforms in Figshare. The platform for individual researchers, which is the one that I mentioned right at the beginning of my presentation that Dr. Mark Hanold funded when he was a researcher himself. That is Figshare.com, and yes, it's absolutely free for researchers to publish in Figshare.com. They get a DOI, they get to put a license, they get a researcher profile. The only caveat to this is that they can only publish their own research, obviously, and the metrics are, yeah, there is also citations and outputs, but you don't have like a full dashboard. The Figshare that we are talking about here is the Figshare for institutions. And that one is where you have a platform for all of your researchers in the institution, in your university. And that one is the one that we are referring to when we are talking to KLISC and when we are talking to others here, because it is the one that allows you to have a proper, I am in the interactive thing, but I just want to show you this page, and I hope you all can see it. So the Figshare for institutions is the one that allows you to have all the outputs collected in one repository. I wanted to show you very briefly Figshare in South Africa. There's a page that I can share with you. I will put it in my presentation, the link, so you can see it. And in South Africa, we have had from SNEM, we have had the sample of Stellenbosch University, which is a very matured research data management support service with a mature data repository that started in 2017, 2018. But we have more institutions in South Africa. We have 21 institutions that are using Figshare as a data repository. So there's a thriving community of institutions that are using Figshare to showcase a whole range of different research outputs. From data, we had the sample of the video of the cattle, or no, it wasn't cattle, it was what was it? Sheep that were shared, cultural heritage sites, digital archives, there is physical objects, all sorts of different types of data. And we are working with all of these institutions, and all of them are here. So if you are interested, you can go onto the link, and from there you can access all of them. And in each of them, you get a link, and you can actually click in the link and go to the repository. I haven't chosen Stellenbosch because we haven't already seen it. I have chosen CiberHub, which is the open data repository from University of Cape Town. It also has the Core Trust Seal certification. It has a lot of content, different types of content. It's a data set here, very interesting. So you can navigate from the page into all of them. But the other thing I want to show you that is very important, because it was mentioned earlier by Professor Arnold, is that also we have aggregated, as in Figshare, we have aggregated all of these 21 data repositories that are not just from institutions, but also from a couple of the research councils. You can see here the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research and the Human Sciences Research Council in South Africa, so also the funders. We have aggregated everything into a single repository. So from this link, Discover Research from South Africa, I hope you can see that we have one single repository that is all the data that is coming up from South Africa. All of it. The groups are each of the institutions that I mentioned earlier. You can see it there, so you can search by group, but you can also search by category and different other tips. I don't want to get into too much of that, but I will encourage all of you to explore it, especially because open access is totally free. And you can see the content, you can see some of the features, You can go at the item level and see the licenses, see the metrics, everything else. I hope this is useful. I'm going to stop sharing now and hand over back to Joy. Thank you very much. Oh,
Thank you so much, Maria. Oh, there's a question. There's a comment. Yes, please. Klongwana, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm not sure if this question has been answered because I quickly needed to step out, but I see that Sherry did ask, is the research data going to be shared in the repository? Just to sort of like add on to what was already discussed, especially in the context of Stellenbosch, yes, the research data is going to be shared in the repository. However, it depends on a number of things if the research data or the data sets are being made available or not. For example, if there's a pending patent, if there's a blind review that is happening, if it's sensitive data, the researchers do have the option to put the data sets under embargo. Therefore, meaning the data sets will not be accessible to people. However, the metadata record will be accessible. And I remember earlier on, one of the presenters mentioned that having your data sets on the repository basically increases the citations. So that is how we also approach it as Stellenbosch in saying, in cases where it's sensitive data, allow us to still upload the data sets so that you can get more citations. However, the public can only see the metadata record and not the actual data sets. So with the data repository, they function as repositories in general because they are fields where we need to populate information. Like for example, with a normal institutional repository on DSpace, they'll be using the Dublin Core to actually describe the metadata. It's the same with the data repository. We are also having fields that are fixed whereby we can actually describe the data sets. But if it's sensitive information and all other issues that I've raised, the researchers are able to put it under embargo. It can be a year long, it can be less. Thank you so much.
thank you. I want to add just a couple of sentences to that as well, because with Figshare, you have that flexibility that you can put things into embargo. As you have said, you can put a fixed date when the embargo will stop. You can put it in permanent embargo, wherever you decide. You can also, so you can embargo both the data only and have the metadata available. You can also have a button that says, if you want to access this data, contact the researcher, and it gets directly to the researcher, and you can explain, I am another researcher for another institution. This is why I want to access your files privately, and the researcher whose data set it is can decide to allow this particular person to just see it. So it's not publicly available, but you can still request it and you can still give it access. There's a lot of functionality that is used. Also, for example, you can have the data set available and people can view it, because in Figshare they can be viewed. It can be viewed in the browser directly, but you can disable downloads if you don't want people to download it and then upload it into their own computers. So there is a lot of flexibility according to the content and what you want to do, and also the funder mandates or the publisher mandates. In some cases, the publishers allow you or not allow you to do those sharings at particular times. You can also choose not to share to the world publicly, but share within your institution, or share only within your faculty, or only to people that are on campus. So there is a lot of flexibility in the functionality that allows for that. And it ensures that the data is only shared when it's safe to do so and when it's appropriate to do so, and obviously according to the licenses that you applied as well. So I wanted to just make that clear. Thank you. Over to you, please, Joy.
Thank you so much, Maria. colleagues, we've seen why we've had conversations on why having a research data management policy is important, why we need to invest in research data management infrastructure, and most importantly, how Figshare can support this entire ecosystem. We need to come out of our comfort zone because as has been shared, number one, we are in an era where we need to make our work accessible. Looking at Agava's presentation, it's quite sad that we can't see our research data. There's no representation of that. And that has to change, particularly the data that we've allowed to be shared. As everyone has also emphasized, you don't have to share everything. If it can be embargoed, well and good, depending on the time limit that you're proposing. So you're pretty much in control. But what we are talking about, back to what we all agreed that we are not comfortable with rankings, but let's look at the rankings that focus on open data, and there are quite a number of those. Those focus on open science and open data, not the traditional ones. And those heavily rely on us making our work accessible and visible, and the degree to which we have adopted open science practices. And research data management heavily falls under open science practices. This is the practical application of open science, particularly if you're looking at the FAIR principles. So my call to action to you is that let's come out of our comfort zone and we start having practical conversations on research data management and its adoption. Now, with that said, based on the interactive session you've gone through in the document, which you've heavily filled, and I'm really happy about that. This will also be included with the recordings that we will share with you. We asked you, what is driving your desire to support your faculty and postgraduate students to share the data openly? You want the data validated. You want to avail the data and make it reused. So some of you are looking at it from a reproducibility perspective. You want to put the FAIR principles in practice. You want to promote and support open science and transparency. You want to promote collaboration. Okay. What practical steps can your institution take to begin or strengthen or support for research data management? Number one, you want to increase awareness. You want to do an advocacy for adopting a FAIR practice. You want to develop an RDM policy, and that is really important. And I'm just picking out the highlights. And what are the key barriers your institute faces in supporting your faculty? Lack of awareness, skills gap, lack of policy, technical challenges, especially when it comes to deploying research, deploying the research repositories. Now, and how can you overcome these barriers? Capacity building, investing in infrastructure. This, as I said, I'm just picking out the highlights. And what do you think about a data repository? Do you think it will provide your faculty what do you think about the data repository you could provide for your faculty and postgraduate students? How do you envisage it? Some of you are saying, and looking at it from self-archiving perspective, having one platform that can be shared, that can share data widely. In essence, all of you are seeing the importance of having a data repository. As mentioned, let's come out of our comfort zone, because this is now about adopting the FAIR principles in a practical manner. We look forward to engaging with all of you, especially those of you who have made an interest in having access to Figshare. We'll be coming back to you and seeing how we can support you. And please note, this is a co-partnership between KLISC, TCC Africa, and Figshare. Figshare will be providing the technical support. TCC Africa will be providing the capacity building that Gava talked about, that Dr. Mwanzu also talked about, that there's a need for capacity building, especially when it comes to the FAIR principles and data management. And this is something that we've been doing. We actually started this in 2024 with Figshare. So it's something that we will be doing regularly with you. So we look forward to working closely with you, and see you tomorrow as we discuss more about kids and how you can adopt the doc ID, the digital object container identifier. So watch out for us. We'll be reaching out to you on how we can support you in adopting Figshare and the capacity building, and see you tomorrow at the same time. Thank you so much, colleagues, and thank you so much for making time to be with us. Bye for now.